Here at BV-TV and BizVision, we're active encouragers and facilitators for those wanting to start a business, especially with our Silverpreneur Channel and other startup programs in hospitality, food and drink creative. But, and there's a big but, we are passionate about that is would-be business starters know the facts and the reality of what they're getting themselves into. Wiseup, as we say on this BV-TV channel. Now, based on his own experience with hundreds of clients, my guest, veteran business advisor, Patrick Burke, came up with a set of key questions every aspiring business owner needs to ask. These are the questions that reveal the truth behind the dream. He's the author of the 10 biggest mistakes and how to avoid them. So let's go across to Cincinnati and say hello to Patrick Burke. Hello, Patrick.
Great to be with you today, Malcolm. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Come on now. What's it like in Cincinnati? Because I'm going to be bragging that we're doing well here and for sunshine in the UK.
Well, it's a beautiful, sunshiny, very non-muggy, sunshiny, non-cloudy day in Cincinnati, which is highly unusual for June, but we'll take it, right?
Yes, yeah. Especially as we're recording this where tomorrow is midsummer. So talking about the dream of somebody in the midsummer night's dream.
That's right, yeah.
Get on with it.
I'm living it today. Tomorrow is supposed to rain, so that's typical, right?
Viewers and listeners, my Wiseup talk with Patrick will be in 3 parts, almost the life stages of a new business. First, we'll talk about what you need to think about before you start. And in part 2, I'll ask Patrick for his advice on getting it going, avoiding those early mistakes. And then in part 3, I'm asking him his tips on keeping it going because the mistake problems still are around. But Patrick, can you briefly tell us who is Patrick Burke and what prompted you to write your book?
Well, I'm a longtime advisor, so I've been advising businesses for 40 years, and probably I started my own accounting practice when I was 28 years old. So I had worked for a larger firm, a national firm, and I decided that probably unwisely, I knew how to better do it than someone else. And it was interesting, actually. I'm a lawyer and a CPA, and I had decided that I didn't want to work where I was working. And my older brother, who was my mentor, took me to lunch, and I said, I think I'd like to work at your firm and work with you. And he goes, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I won't use the same colorful language he used, but he said, you're a, we'll say, shoddy employee. Right. And if you're going to do something, you should probably do it on your own. And if you're going to do it on your own, since you've got a little tailwind with accounting, why don't you go ahead and give that a shot? If it doesn't work, you can always go back and become work for a law firm. So with the discussion, it didn't last much longer than that. Off I went. And so anyway, in starting my own company, I guess I've made, a boatload of mistakes, and, each day I make a new one probably. But, I would say I made one big mistake, which was bringing on a partner too early, and that's one of the big mistakes in the book. So I guess I really did this out of the goodness of my heart. I really feel like every business has an opportunity, and every business owner has an opportunity to be a successful business owner and to not only make money as they run the business, but make money when they sell the business. And I liken business to a weekend golf match, right? You and your partner go out and play. The guy that hits, or the woman who hits the most spectacular shot, isn't who wins. It's who made the fewest mistakes, right? I mean, you may have hit that, 180-yard 5-iron over a 80-foot tree before, but you're not going to do it again. So, just knock the ball out and go ahead and, play for the bogey. And if you avoid those big mistakes in business, I mean, you have to have good products and financing and ideas, but so often, the company's derailed by something that's completely avoidable. And so I'm trying to help everyone the way I help my own clients, try to avoid the big mistake that ends up, crashing your ship into the iceberg.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I enjoyed reading your book. You were very lucky with this guy called Mike, your next door neighbor, many times, weren't you?
Yes. Yeah, that was So my first book was called Exit Velocity, and I wrote it as a business fable. And when you have a book like that, you have to have somebody who gives you good advice, who's not just an advisor, somebody that you're not paying directly, and will give you advice like the Dutch uncle, as we call them. I don't know if that term is used in the UK or not, but that's sometimes the best advice, right?
Yeah, yeah. Now, you've written, obviously, 10 of major mistakes, but I don't want viewers and listeners to think, as they're starting a business, those are the only 10.
No.
I said to you before, and before we started recording, I could add 4,000 to that.
And I've probably seen most of those too.
Yeah, but those 10 that we're going to filter in and are in the book, without a doubt, as I've read through, are the key ones. So let's move to part one. If you read some of the, and let me call it rubbish, put out by so-called gurus, you would think that it's plain sailing starting a business. It isn't. It's always painted as glossy, but my wife Kim and I know it isn't. We've had the ups and downs, and they continue to happen as the world has its alterations. Can you give my viewers and listeners some, let's call them wise-ups, as we're looking to start a business?
Well, it's funny. I just had a meeting yesterday with a young man who's got an idea for a construction-related product, and he does kitchen remodeling, and he said, one of the biggest drawbacks to that business is you can't get cabinetry. You could wait 20 weeks, and you just people don't. You can't do the countertops. And he found a way to do this that can be done in days. It requires a little capital expenditure. And I said, well, right off the bat, you're doing something smart here. You're getting into a business, or potentially getting into a business, where you add significant value. And I think too many people become enamored of ideas that they think are big ideas. And I tell people, if you aren't the best player at the key position, or the second best player at several key positions, it's going to be very difficult to make this business successful. And I would say, I always look at business as a three-legged stool, right? There's sales, production, administration, and you can be the greatest administrator in the world. And it's going to be very hard for you to be a super successful business if you're good at accounting and human resources, right? That just doesn't float the boat. However, my one caveat there is, if you're going into a franchise business that's already created the processes, and you're good at running those processes, you will be successful. But franchises are expensive, but they've created for you the hardest thing to create, which is a sustainable advantage, right? You follow their metrics and their formula, and you'll likely be successful.
But you were clever, though. You didn't go actually take up that franchise, did you, of the that related to the construction?
No, that was actually.
It's a good story in the book. It's a good one.
It is. Well, it's there's and even with that, I mean, that was a giant trash masher. There's things that are good ideas, but if you particularly don't add value to it, because you don't know anybody in the market, you don't really know who the shakers and movers are, why go in and try to create a new vertical, particularly if you're starting this, like so many people are now, starting businesses in their 50s or even 60s. So it's like the idea that you're going to sort of create a network around something you've never done before at age 55 is probably not true.
That's true.
You just don't have like that, the book, Talent is Overrated, right? You don't have the 10,000 hours you need to be good at that, or be good enough at it to be successful.
I thought, though, at this sort of startup stage there, that one of the things I learned from your book, which I've applied myself in the past without knowing I've done so, is stick to what you know. You were about to go into that franchise, but your Mike, the mentor, said, that's not where your skill set lies, is it?
No, and I think that's clearly it's when people are, I would say, particularly dissatisfied with their current position, or and a lot of that goes on. I mean, we got a lot of multinational companies here in Cincinnati, and they routinely have right-sizing situations, and there's a number of 50-plus-year-olds that are given nice severance packages, but now they're in search of a business or a a new place to land. And then one of the first things that we tell them is, unfortunately, no multinational company is going to hire a 55-year-old unless it's going to be for CEO.
Yeah.
And you're not qualified.
Yeah.
So, what else might you want to do? And it's kind of like, don't go to the grocer when you're too hungry. You'll end up with things in your basket that you shouldn't be eating. And I think that's what happens when you've got someone who walks out of a multinational. They might have a couple of $1 million worth of savings and severance, and they think they're going to start up the world's best Italian restaurant. And it's like, no, you're not. So let's move down the road from that to something else.
Yeah, I quite agree. Obviously, with our Silverpreneurs channel, which is for people 50 plus starting a business, we're meeting a lot of those people, and some of the jobs they're having to take is through desperation. But saying, try and sit back, and your book has got some really great advice. Patrick, before we move to part 2, let me just remind everyone of your URL of your website and where you can go into more details of the book. It's Burke, B-U-R-K-E. I'm reading this out, obviously, for listeners. Viewers, you can see it on the screen behind me. But Burke, B-U-R-K-E-C-P-A, BurkeCPA.com. Right, part 2. Let's get this business going. Now, remember, I said of the many pitfalls. No way trying to put anybody watching or listening to this off your dream. Just hoping that through my guest, you can avoid the usual mistakes and journey to success. So, Patrick, what's your thoughts on avoiding getting it going mistakes?
But I'd say, and this can also be a startup, but often this happens sort of, midstream. You've got an idea. It's got some traction, and suddenly you understand that there's going to be some new expenses, perhaps capital expenses associated with a new location, equipment, and it's, you go to the bank and the bank says, well, we're willing to do X, but you need 3X, and you're saying, what do we do now? And I think the sort of knee-jerk reaction is, I better go find a partner.
Yeah.
And I wrote a book about partnership called There Is No Us in Business, but of course there is an us in business, but the us should be avoided when possible. And there's a common, and I don't know if this term is used in the UK or not, but the first source of funds should be the 3 F's, which is family, friends, fools, right?
Yeah.
And I say that somewhat facetiously because in general, if you can borrow money from a family or a friend, the fools, let's leave them out of it. And you could pay it back based upon some agreed upon, performance bogeys. That's a good way to get the business to the next level.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I would say that group of people, it should be your own money up front because people want to know you're committed. Once you put some money in and you need a little more, it's kind of easy to go to a secondary source to sort of get some patient capital in there. But too often, as I say, it's interesting that the lone wolf that started the business suddenly begins to hunt in packs, at this point. And it's like, hey, whoa, wait a minute here. My gold standard for that is, if somebody possesses a skill that you absolutely can't find anywhere else, then that person is a partner material. If you can buy it for something besides equity, namely money, then get the money somewhere else and pay the person as an employee. And maybe they have some sort of opportunity to buy in later, but to bring someone in as a partner is a sort of an operating partner for a financial reason is almost always disastrous. Unfortunately, I've presided over probably almost as many business divorces as I have business unions, and for obvious reasons, right? It tends not to work, and I think mostly because what I find is what each of the partners brings to the table is, particularly the founding partner will have certain things that he believes he does better, and then the new partner thinks she adds certain values that, even though she got onto a speeding train, she thinks she's the one that, so the vis-a-vis with who adds what value is an extremely difficult matter to work out. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, I have a discussion about that every week with somebody. So it's clearly a problem.
I like the learning in your book. It was somebody called Linda, I think, was it, if I recall, that that you had to make those decisions. Absolutely fascinating, the book, and the stages of business and business growth in it. My final part, Patrick, is, to me, the key part: keeping it going. I think it's a time when so many business owners fall foul of an inability to scale correctly. They often accept strange advice. The company may balloon in turnover, but not in profits. And as happened in the pandemic, that balloon can easily burst. What's your thinking and advice on keeping it going?
Well, number one, the idea is, what we call it is institutionalizing your value. And I think, let's talk about the entrepreneur. She has a great idea. She's executed the idea at a high level. She's got 20 employees that hang on her every word. They understand the business because they've learned it directly from her. And she's now got 3 locations, and it's profitable, and she'd like to grow. And it's been my experience that generally after 20 people, the personality cult kind of wears out a little bit, and you have to have processes and metrics, because the 21st person doesn't know the founder as well as the first 20 did. And you can't rely upon sort of the idea of corporate folklore to run your business. The idea of people, process, metrics is critical, more critical today than ever, because if you're not keeping track of all that, your competitors are. And, the idea of having a sustainable advantage when it's all predicated on you and your personality and your ability to produce or sell, you don't have that value. And it's very difficult conversation, Malcolm, when you have an entrepreneur who comes in and says, okay, I'm ready to sell. And it's like, well, it's kind of like looking into a baby carriage and saying, well, Junior there's not really that great looking just yet. You might want to wait till he grows up a little.
Yeah.
So, and generally,
I loved
the
your
situation.
learning. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, carry on, please.
Usually the first time somebody comes to me and says, I want to sell, it's because they're tired of doing too many things they don't add value to.
Yes.
And so that's exactly when you shouldn't sell, because, buyers are smart. They're going to come in and see you don't have, you set up your company, what we call a rake. It's you at the top, and then at the bottom, all all your employees are the help. So there's pretty often, I'd say, particularly with companies with sales under $20 million, say, they don't really have a good middle management team. And, my experience with entrepreneurs is they have 2 lenses. They got a wide angle lens to look for opportunity and threats, and they've got a microscopic lens to respond to those. But the middle distance, where you create the processes and create the sustainability, that's not their thing. That's not where they focus their efforts. And so to get that person to say, okay, I know you've always done it this way, and you've looked at middle management as sort of being an impediment to your success. Well, if you want to successfully sell this and create sustainable value, now we have to go out and we have to hire you a COO or a sales manager or whatever that person is. And then they reluctantly, at that point, generally it takes 6 months, then they come back and say, okay, let's do it. So that's a critical, and if they don't do it, then either the business becomes non-saleable, really, that just sort of, one day he just takes down his placard in front of the store, and that's that. Or it goes at a discount, because people see that, smart buyers, the idea that you're going to, the greater fool theory that somebody's going to overpay for your business buyers are a smart lot, and that's just not going to happen.
Yeah. I love some of your lessons as well around this area. As you're growing, don't go and buy the Porsche.
Oh, it's I mean, and I think it's it's interesting because it's like I deserve it. I'll reward myself and all that sort of thing. And a little bit of that. I mean, hey, you have to have some fun, right?
Yeah,
but,
yes.
But when the outward aspects of success become that important, and you're starving a business, and the example I use is, in the book I talk about a shoe shine stand, but it can be anything where it's just you Inc. And it's like whether you're a single person consultant or a photographer, there's only so much more you can put into capital expenditures, and it's a lifestyle business, right? You've created a job for yourself that will be a job for you for as long as you want to do it. But it doesn't really, you haven't created value in that job that can be transferred to anyone else. That's fine. And that isn't really a growth business. But if you've got a business that's going to need that middle management person, and the owner says, hey, what I really want to do this year is take my family on a safari in Africa, and it's going to be $100,000. And it's like, well, that $100,000, that would pay for your COO for a year. Why don't we think about that instead?
Yes.
That's when you want to.
Yeah.
That's the problem, right?
Terrific learning in your book, Patrick. Today, almost more than ever, people are seeking to start a new business for any number of reasons. They have the dream, and Patrick Burke and myself want their dream to come to reality. But as the saying goes, forewarned is forearmed. And that's what you can get from my guest's brilliant book and his great advice in this interview. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. I've really enjoyed it.